Today we're going to be installing the iDatalink Maestro CHK1, which is a radio replacement solution for the 2014 and up Jeep Cherokee. The CHK1 will work in all trims of the Jeep Cherokee, but will not work in any of the Jeep Grand Cherokee models. For this installation, you're going to need the following parts, which are all sold separately. The iDatalink Maestro Kit CHK1, which is an installation trim bezel and vehicle-specific wiring harness, the iDatalink Maestro RR radio replacement interface, a 40 EU10 antenna adapter, and finally an iDatalink Maestro compatible radio. In this particular installation, we're using the Kenwood Exelon DNX893S, but for a complete list of iDatalink compatible radios, you can go to the link below. If you're installing the SXV300 satellite radio tuner, you can use the iDatalink Sat1, which will convert your factory satellite radio antenna to work with your aftermarket tuner. You will also need the following tools to complete this installation. Now that we have all of our tools and parts needed for the installation, let's begin. We'll start out by programming the Maestro RR interface, which is done through a PC-based laptop or desktop computer and Internet Explorer. But before we can get started, there's a few things we need in order to complete the programming process. Look at the side of the box of the radio you're about to install. Locate the product serial number and write it down, as you will need to enter it during the programming process. Next, we need to determine whether the Jeep Cherokee has an external amplifier. Look for any logos on the dash or the doors. There are a total of 4 different audio configurations found in the Jeep Cherokee. Alpine, Beats Audio, and Harman Kardon are all premium audio systems with an external amplifier. If there are no logos, this means the system is non-amplified. Now we can begin the programming process. Open the Maestro RR packaging and remove the module as well as the small black USB cable. Then connect it to your computer. Next, launch Internet Explorer and go to the iDatalink Maestro website. The Maestro RR requires ActiveX to program it, which is currently only supported on Internet Explorer. If this is your first time flashing an iDatalink product, you will need to complete 2 steps. First, create a WebLink account. This is no different than creating an account for any other website. Just follow the steps. Second, you will need to install the WebLink drivers. This is a very step-by-step process, but there is a tutorial on how to do it at the link below. Once you are logged in and the module has been connected, you will see Detecting Hardware, please wait. If you see WebLink Updater plugin required, this means the drivers have not been installed. Now enter the make, year, and model of the Jeep. Next, specify if the audio system is amplified or non-amplified. Now choose the steering wheel configuration. Some models may or may not have radio buttons behind the steering wheel. Next, enter the make and the model of the radio you are installing. You will then be prompted to enter the serial number you wrote down earlier. It is very important that both the radio model and serial number are correct, or the radio will not power on once installed. You will now see a list of required and optional accessories. Make sure to select the CHK1 under the required accessories, then continue to the next step. Now the retained and added systems are displayed. Just leave them all checked and continue to the next step. If you are installing an aftermarket amplifier for your door speakers, uncheck the factory amplifier box. In this step, you can program your steering wheel buttons. They will be pre-configured to match the factory commands, however you can change them if you want. The Maestro RR also provides a very convenient feature called dual button functionality. This means that each steering wheel button can perform 2 commands, one for a single press and one for a press and hold. There are drop-down buttons on each button, so you can program the secondary function. Once you have completed this process, press Next. You have now completed the programming process, and the configuration will be uploaded to the Maestro RR. Do not disconnect it from the computer until flashing is complete. Be sure to print the wallet card, which provides a list of what each steering wheel command does. This is very useful to the customer for learning the secondary press and hold functions. Now download and print the installation and owner's guide, and you are ready to begin the installation. Start by removing the lower climate control panel to expose the 2 screws that hold in the radio bezel. Use a panel tool to help get it started, then gently pull outward to release the clips holding it into the dash. Then disconnect it from the car and put it to the side. Now remove the 2 Phillips head screws holding the radio trim bezel in place. Gently pull on the bottom of the bezel to release the clips, working your way around the edge to remove it from the dash. If your vehicle has the hazard switch in the dash, disconnect it and set the radio trim bezel aside for now. Now remove the 4 Phillips head screws holding the factory radio in place. Next, disconnect the factory wiring harness and antenna connections from the back of the radio. Because the Jeep Cherokee dash is very shallow, the metal bracket located behind the factory radio must be removed to make room for the new radio. For these next few steps, I highly recommend wearing some protective gloves. The metal bracket edges are very sharp. Open the storage compartment located on the top center of the dash. Remove the rubber mat to expose the single Phillips head screw, then remove it. Now remove the 2 8mm bolts visible from the front. This next part can be a bit tricky. There are 2 Phillips head screws located behind the metal bracket. I suggest using a 7mm socket to break them loose, then using a short Phillips head screwdriver to remove them the rest of the way. The metal bracket should now be free from the car, however the plastic subdash is blocking it from being removed. Use a utility knife or a Dremel to cut away the plastic to create enough room so the bracket can be removed. This will not prevent the car from being returned to factory. You can still reinstall the factory radio after the subdash has been cut. Now remove both the air vents and the hazard switch from the factory bezel you just removed from the car. The hazard switch is held in by 4 T25 Torx screws. Now on the CHK1 bezel, remove the 4 screws holding the blank panel where the hazard switch goes. If your hazard switch is not located here, just leave the blank panel attached. Install the factory hazard switch using the 4 screws supplied with the CHK1. Now install the air vents. The CHK1 uses the same mounting system as the factory bezel. Simply line up the positioning ring to the post and press straight down, making sure they click into place. Next, mount the supplied metal brackets to the side of the radio being installed. The brackets are labeled for left and right. You may need to do a test fit to determine the best positioning for the brackets. Connect the T-harness supplied with the CHK1 to the wiring harness provided with the aftermarket radio. Use the installation guide to determine which wires to connect. There may be some wires that are not used, so just tape them off. Next, follow the installation guide to connect the T-harness to the Maestro RR interface. Now remove the black 4-pin data cable and the 3-pin to mini audio cable from the Maestro RR packaging. There will be some additional cables in the box, but they are not needed for this installation. Connect the 4-pin and the 3-pin cables to the matching black plugs on the Maestro RR. Then with some electrical tape, attach them to the T-harness. The opposite ends of these cables will connect to the aftermarket radio. If your vehicle does not have a factory amplifier, make sure the green and white connectors on the T-harness are connected to their corresponding color. If your vehicle does have an amplifier, these connectors should be on the opposite plugs. Now connect the CHK1 T-harness to the factory plug behind the radio. There is a small cavity in the back of the dash to put the Maestro RR and the harness connection. Next, connect the 40EU10 antenna adapter to the white antenna connector. If you are installing the media hub adapter, connect the USB adapter to the gray plug. If you are retaining the factory satellite antenna, connect the SAT1 adapter to the yellow connector. The purple connector is for the factory GPS antenna. You can use the iDatalink Nav1 or Nav2 to retain this antenna to work with the aftermarket navigation. If it is not needed, just tuck it away behind the dash. Next, install the radio's Bluetooth mic, GPS antenna, USB cables, and satellite radio tuner. Then make all the connections to the radio. I recommend using some tape around the connections like the reverse camera and USB ports so they do not get pulled apart when you're installing the radio. Make sure the 4-pin and mini audio cables are connected to the port labeled iDatalink interface. Once all the connections have been made, press the radio into the dash. You may need to use one hand to push cables back into the dash while setting the radio in place. Just make sure the hazard switch does not get caught behind the radio. Now secure the radio using the 4 screws from the factory radio. Then reconnect the hazard switch and install the CHK1 dash kit, making sure the clips snap into place. Then secure it with the 2 Phillips head screws. Finally, reinstall the climate control panel, and that completes the radio installation. In the last part of this installation, we will replace the USB located in the center console. This is an optional step, but it is required if you want to retain the factory USB. It is needed because the Jeep Cherokee uses a media hub to control the USB, which most aftermarket radios cannot read through. The CHK1 provides an adapter that allows the factory USB to work with the aftermarket radio. Although the guide does not instruct you to fully remove the center console, I suggest doing this for an easier access to the rear of the media hub. Start by pulling down the shift boot and releasing it from the shifter. Remove the 2 T30 Torx screws holding the shift knob in place, then remove the shifter. Now, using a pick tool or a small flathead screwdriver, remove the small panel in the front of the center console. Next, remove the top portion of the center console. There are a few ways to do this, but I found it easiest to pull straight upward to release a few of the clips. Then use a panel tool to work your way around the edge, removing it completely. You will then need to shift the car into gear to make enough clearance to get the console out. Next, disconnect the center console from the car. There are a total of 4 connections. Now remove the media hub from the center console. There are 6 locking tabs that hold it in place, and you can simply use your fingers to release them. Then disconnect the 12-volt charging port and media hub harness. This part is a little difficult. There are 4 locking tabs around the housing that hold the media hub in place. To get it out, I used a panel tool, pick tool, and a small flathead screwdriver, releasing 1 tab at a time to remove it. Now simply insert the CHK1 media hub adapter into place, making sure it clicks in. Then reinstall it into the center console and reconnect the 12-volt charging port and harness for the USB. Finally, reinstall the center console the same way you removed it, remembering to reconnect all the harnesses before you snap it into place. If your vehicle is equipped with the second USB location in the storage compartment between the seats, you can retain it with the longer USB adapter provided with the CHK1. Just make the connection at the media hub location and run it to the new radio. This completes the media hub adapter installation. Now that the installation is complete, let's power on the radio for the first time and make sure everything works. Test the steering wheel controls to see if they are operational. Also check the climate controls, backup camera, vehicle info screen, and gauges screen. If they are all functional, the installation was successful.